Not many fighters throughout the history of boxing can be recognised as dazzling and awe-inspiring as James "Lights Out" Toney. During his prime, Toney would put on masterful defensive performances while also dishing out skill and devastating offense, making him, in my opinion, one of the most entertaining and naturally talented fighters in boxing history. Let's take a look over his almost 3-decade-long professional career and bask in one of the greatest defensive fighters in the history of the sport. So starting off with Toney's amateur career, it wasn't particularly long. According to Boxrec, Toney had 35 amateur fights, 33 wins, and 2 losses. However, he had an absolutely insane 32 knockout victories as an amateur, meaning he only won by decision once. James Toney would turn professional in 1988, recording a TKO victory over Stephen Lee. He would remain extremely active during his first 12 months, fighting 12 times, winning every bout. By mid-1990, Toney was undefeated and had a perfect record before facing Sanderline Williams. Williams would end Toney's perfect record, but not his undefeated streak. The fight ended in a majority draw. 2.5 months later, a rematch was in order where Toney won a lopsided unanimous decision. In 1991, Toney would make his mark on the boxing world. After 2 victories in the early part of the year, Toney got his chance at the IBF and lineal middleweight championships against 36-0 Michael Nunn. Nunn had huge victories over guys like Frank Tate, Juan Domingo Roldan, Sumbu Kalambe, Barkley, and Donald Curry. A truly underrated fighter, and coming into this bout was not to be taken lightly. However, Toney was superb and showed off his incredible talent against a very tough and skillful opponent. Toney would show off his relentless and destructive capabilities, annihilating Nunn in the 11th round, becoming the new IBF and lineal middleweight champion of the world. But Toney wouldn't sit back and relax on his newly won titles, taking on the tough Reggie Johnson a month later. Reggie Johnson again was not going to be an easy fight, and it showed with Toney being dropped in the second round by a powerful left hand from Johnson. The fight was really close, with some observers believing Toney deserved the decision and others seeing it going the way of the challenger. The scorecards would represent this as well. One judge scoring it 114-113 Toney, the second judge scoring it 113-114 Johnson, and the last judge scoring it 115-112 Toney. Toney successfully defended his title by split decision. A dominant 4th round TKO win over Francesco Del Aquila followed before his first of 3 bouts with the great Mike McCallum. But once again, Toney kept his undefeated record but didn't earn victory. The fight ended with a split decision draw, with Toney retaining his lineal and IBF crown again. 1991 would prove to be one of the greatest in Toney's career, earning him his first Ring Fight of the Year award. But obviously his career didn't stop there. 8 months and 3 successive victories after this first bout with McCallum, the two would meet again. Toney this time would earn a majority decision in his last defense of the middleweight crown. Toney would then beat Doug DeWitt next before getting his chance at the IBF super middleweight crown against Barkley. Toney, who was still undefeated at 33-0-2, and Barkley, who had faced the best fighters available to him at the time. These include 2 victories over Tommy Hearns, a TKO win over Darren Van Horn, and losses to Sumbu Kalambe, Roberto Duran, Michael Nunn, and Nigel Benn. He had a record of 30 wins and 7 losses coming into this bout with Toney. But once again, Toney had one of the most incredible performances that night, turning the tough and rugged Barkley inside out, putting on an absolute masterclass. Toney would stop Barkley in the 9th, winning the IBF strap in his 2nd division. Toney would then defend his newly won super middleweight crown a couple of times, including an impressive TKO win over undefeated Tim Littles. He would then have to put his undefeated record and title at risk against another undefeated pound-for-pound stalwart, Roy Jones Jr. This would be Toney's biggest challenge yet. Roy Jones Jr. was 26-0, whilst Toney was 44 wins, no losses, and 2 draws. Whoever would come out on top would be in contention for the pound-for-pound king title. It is also important to note, as of April 1994, Ring Magazine had James Toney listed as the 3rd best pound-for-pound fighter on the planet, and Roy Jones Jr. in 8th. But in the actual fight, Jones had Toney's number. Jones would catch Toney and send him off balance with his signature left hook in the 3rd, sending Toney to the mat. When the final bell rung after 12 rounds, Jones's hand was raised and Toney's titles, undefeated record, and status as top 10 pound-for-pound fighter in the world disappeared. Toney, after this loss, would move to light heavyweight to face undefeated Montel Griffin, in a bout he would lose by majority decision in his 2nd successive loss. Toney was never the most disciplined fighter, and it started to show after these 2 losses. Toney would fight many journeyman fighters, blowing up in weight from his middle and super middleweight heyday. He would jump between light heavyweight and cruiserweight for less than reputable titles, including the WBU light heavyweight title and the WBU Continental Cruiserweight title. Then in December 1996, he would once again fight then undefeated Montel Griffin in a rematch, losing again by unanimous decision. A win against basically elderly Mike McCallum in their 3rd bout would lead Toney to face Drake Thadze. Toney would come in overweight and lose by majority decision, but even though Toney's discipline was still very much coming into question, this loss would cause a resurgence of James Toney. Following this loss, Toney would go on an almost 6-year unbeaten streak until 2003, where we would get the chance for Vasily Jurov's recognized IBF cruiserweight strap. It had almost been 10 years since Toney held one of the quote-unquote real world titles. After 11 rounds of fighting coming into the 12th, both men put everything on the line, Jurov being a highly aggressive and Toney still on the ropes, countering, slipping and rolling punches, until Toney landed a quick body shot only to be followed up by a combo that sent Jurov to the canvas with 17 seconds left in the round. Jurov would get up, but Toney had become the new IBF cruiserweight champion of the world. But Toney had bigger plans. His next aim was to go and conquer the heavyweight division. His next fight came against an aging Evander Holyfield, where Toney would earn a 9th round TKO over the real deal. These two fights in 2003 made Toney for the first time since 1991 the ring fight of the year. Toney would only have one fight in 2004, however, winning a title eliminator against undefeated Rydell Booker before facing John Ruiz for the heavyweight crown. Toney would make boxing history, beating John Ruiz and winning the WBA heavyweight world title, becoming only the 3rd former middleweight world champion to eventually become heavyweight champion, behind Bob Fitzsimmons and Roy Jones Jr. But the decision would be overturned to a no contest due to Toney testing positive for the steroid nandrolone. Toney would attempt to win the WBC heavyweight world title against Hasim Rahman, but the decision ended in a majority draw with Rahman retaining the title. 2 losses to Samuel Peter followed, and Toney's legendary career turned to that of a journeyman, trading wins and losses until he officially retired in 2017 at the age of 48 years old, almost 49. His final record was 92 fights, 77 wins, 47 coming by way of knockout, 10 losses, 3 draws and 2 no contests. Toney's story is that of a fighter with all the talent and skills in the world who was only let down by himself and his decisions. Lack of professionalism and weight management led him astray at a point in his career where he could have been in talks for pound-for-pound greatness. His fight with Jurov in 2003 was a short return to that greatness, but that wasn't to last. He lost the ability to be called a full-weight world champion and the world heavyweight champion by a failed drug test. What would have happened if he was disciplined? Who can say? But James Toney, no matter the cautionary tale, can still be called one of the greats and one of the most talented individuals in the history of boxing. So what was your favourite fight and or memory of James Toney? Leave it in the comments, and if you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one. Bye.